Hi everyone, welcome to Minnie and Me on the road. This is Minnie and I'm Christy, and it's so great that you could join us here tonight. So, you might be thinking about renting your house out, or maybe you're thinking about selling your house, and you've asked in Facebook groups and you've been overwhelmed with all the different answers and opinions you've received. I know I was when I first started researching, so I thought I would share my experience of why I decided to rent my property out rather than selling it. So, when I first decided or was thinking about hitting the road, I reached out to a co-worker and asked for suggestions for real estate agents, and he recommended one who I rang, and it was about 6 months before I decided that I was going to hit the road. And I rang them and let them know that I was looking to rent my house out in 6 months' time. Would they come out and have a look around and let me know what needed to be doing? And they said that to give them a call in 6 months' time, and then we could discuss the renting arrangement. And that didn't work for me because I have an old house. So I said, no problems, and reached out to my co-worker and asked for another suggestion. And he gave me one, and I gave them a call, and she came out a couple of days later and had a look through the house and gave me pointers about all the different things that I needed to fix. It was quite a long list. It was things like the smoke detector had to be hardwired, the fireplace had to be checked for compliance, the shower screen when I bought the house 12 years earlier was broken and that had to be fixed. I had some old bath taps that had been cut off and they had to be made safe. I had the front door was scratched by my cat, so that needed to be replaced. There was quite a long list. So it was wonderful that she came out 6 months before so that I could start working through them. And then as it got closer to when I was going to rent my place out, she came out again and had another look. I forgot to mention the reason I decided to rent my place out rather than selling. I did think about selling and then I'd have the money and it felt so much easier. I wouldn't have to worry about all the renting. Renting felt scary. Every time I asked friends or family, they'd had a lot of them had negative experiences with tenants destroying places. It was quite scary, the idea of renting. But the reason I decided to rent my place out was because I wanted to have the asset. My house will grow in value at the same time as everybody else's houses. So when I decide to finish traveling, I've got the property there that I can sell and buy where I'd like to. So that was why I decided to rent my place out. The other thing is that the rent almost pretty much covers the mortgage and most of the expenses. So at the same time my mortgage has been paid off, the rental income is classed as income. So I do need to pay tax on that. But then the interest on the mortgage is tax deductible as well as all the expenses. So it's something to have a chat to your accountant about what's best for you or a financial advisor. I'm just sharing what works for me and my experiences. So, getting back to the story, I was coming up to close to getting ready to travel. She came back out, gave me more lists of things that I had to do. Another thing was I had a branch that was growing over the house that I had to have cut down. The front and back deck needed repairing. My house was an older house, so there was a lot of little maintenance things that needed doing. Fine if you own the house, but when you have to rent it out, there's a lot of things that they obviously get it up to a certain standard, which was quite a learning curve for me. But it was quite interesting because then she gave me another list, a third list. I was starting to feel quite disheartened and thought that I would never hit the road. I was living in my caravan in the driveway at this point. The house was empty. I was cleaning it. It was pretty much ready to go, except for the little lists I kept getting. And then out of the blue, my real estate agent rang me. She had a family that was living with another family because they couldn't get a rental and asked if they could have a look through. They looked through a couple of days later, and it was less than a week from when they first got that phone call and then they moved in and I was on the road. It was just amazing how quickly the turnaround was. I've been renting the place out now for over 18 months, and during that time, I haven't had too many issues. I've had to have a plumber out for a washer that had gone. Just recently, with all the wind that we've had, their antenna has fallen off the roof, but it doesn't seem to be the one that they need for the TV. It seems to be just a random one that was on the roof. So that needs to be sorted. When they first moved in, they asked if they could have a screen door on the front door, so I approved that to be installed. That was about it. It's been pretty smooth sailing. The real estate agent's fantastic managing it. I send all the bills to them. They're actually addressed to the real estate agent so that they can pay them out of the rental money. And the reason that we do that is that at the end of financial year, it's all on the property statement. So that's really beneficial. Some of the expenses that I have with a rental property. So on my rates, the property is valued at 280,000 and my rent is 420 a week. So the real estate charge an audit fee of $20 a year. The rates is $1,200 a year. There's emergency service levy of $70 a year. There's an inspection fee, which it's inspected every 3 months, and that's $120 for the year. Lease renewals, $50 a year. The plumbing was $300. Management fees about $1,600 for the year. Water is probably the service fees about $80 because the tenants pay the rest of the water. And then there's landlord insurance that I pay fortnightly, which is about $60 a fortnight. The management fee actually goes on a percentage of the rent. So I just looked it up before this live stream, and my management fee looks like it's 8.8% of my rent. And I feel that for me, it's about $36 a week, and I'm quite happy to pay that because I don't want to manage the property. They do a great job. There was a letting fee when it first got put on the market or first went, and it was 2.2 weeks of my rent. And then there's a marketing fee of $200, but I didn't have to pay that because they already had someone sorted. And then I'd actually forgotten until I started looking through all my emails before I started this. And the day before the tenants were due to move in, I rang up to get landlord insurance. And this was around the time that all the flooding was happening along the Murray River. And I rang 2 or 3 places and none of them would give me landlord insurance. By this time, I was starting to freak out because I had tenants moving in the next day and I couldn't have tenants move in without having landlord insurance. Thankfully, and they were all saying that it was because of the flooding, but I was nowhere near the Murray River. So that was quite confusing. I ended up ringing NRMA and asking them, and they just said, well, they just wouldn't give me flood cover for, it was only a couple of days, but they would insure everything else. And that was such a relief. It was super stressful and I'd forgotten all about that. So that's the basics of renting out my place. I found it quite straightforward, but does anyone have any questions about renting out their house? There is some legislation that's also changed around renting out your house. That came in, I think it was around July this year. And one of the things is that it's harder to say no to pets in rentals now. They don't have to be inside, they just have to be outside, but it's harder to say no to pets. That was never an issue for me, but it is for some people. So it's just something to think about as well if you are going to rent your place out. If nobody has any questions, it's been lovely to have a chat again this week. Next week, I thought I would have a chat about some tips around caravanning and things I've learnt over the last 18 months that might come in handy. So I will see you again next week. Thank you for joining us and goodbye.